Hello everyone, my name is William Obots. By the grace of God, I'm the moderator of Afro Science Foundation. It is my pleasure to introduce Afro Science Foundation to the world and to let us understand as much as it is necessary for us to know about the foundation. Afro Science Foundation is a research organization made up of scientists, linguists, and ICT scholars from various countries of Africa who have come together with the motive of unraveling the puzzle that is behind the backwardness of Africa. It is a very sad situation to see that Africans have a whole lot of graduates, scholars in the science and technology field, but then the reverse is the case. When we try to evaluate the level of productivity, technological advancement, and the way we can solve our problems, it is so saddening to see that the higher the level of graduates in these fields, the higher also the level of unemployment, unproductivity, and dependence on foreign supplies. These were the puzzles that brought about the need for Afro Science Foundation to go into this research and find out what should be a solution to these problems. Well, on the line of that research, we stumbled on a whole lot of excuses and explanations. One of such was that the science institutions are not well equipped by government, that some laboratories in schools are not well furnished, and some facilities that is needed for educational purposes are not available. And for these reasons, the graduates are not suitably trained. Now, this sounds plausible. This gave the avenue for the upcoming of various private institutions. These private institutions came up with so exorbitant rates, charges, fees to make up for funds adequate, sufficient to procure enough facilities, equipment to cover up for the loopholes in the public schools. In the last 2 or 3 decades, a lot of private secondary schools, private polytechnics, private universities have taken so much from Africans in the name of providing enough educational equipments to cover up for the loopholes in the government institutions. Sad enough, they have not been able to solve that problem because the graduates produced from these private institutions cannot be said to do better than those from the public institutions. And so the research kept on going deeper to find out this is not the actual cause. It could be part of the cause, but it is not the actual cause. So Afro Science Foundation came up to find out what is actually the cause. And we try to follow an adage that says if you're trying to know your way forward, you should start from knowing your way backward, where you are coming from. And so the question was, in knowing the history of Africans educationally, technologically, where do we start from? And we discovered that in virtually every human race, science education is as old as mankind itself. Every human race have always studied, understood, and communicated with their environment. That understanding of how their environment works is the science we are talking about. And it has been in a gradual process. Each generations have built upon what their forefathers did, and each generation improves upon what their forefathers did. And the level of science in every generation corresponds to the level of productivity, the level of technology in every generation. And our forefathers had their own science. In my community, for example, we had Ekpo masquerade. Masquerade in most African communities was an institution of learning, a scientific institution. What they did inside the forest was researches that explained, gave answer to questions of which herbs were good enough for food, which ones were for medication, which ones were ornamental. Everything about human endeavor was solved by scientific experimentation. From time to time, different kind of ailments, epidemic, pandemic arose, and it was the place of these masquerades to carry out research in the forest to give a solution to such problems. It went on like that, and until the era of colonization, when the Westerners came in and the traditional education system was overthrown, was defeated. It wasn't a battle of guns and wits, as we found out. It was just like the present situation of economic colonization, because right now we are into economic colonization. Foreign products coming in through networking. They say, okay, you register in this networking company and you receive foreign goods, and you reject your own goods, and you convince your brother to register under you, like your downline, and your brother will register another one, and then the network continues. And so the beverages and the toiletries we've been using before, you will not use those ones again that was produced by your country in Africa. You'll be using the ones that are brought in from outside. That was the same thing that happened then. Those foreigners came in and they said, okay, free education, free treatments, and then the people then that were admitted into the masquerade cults were the people of high intellectual IQ. It was something like now you write JAM or exams, and the people that score high are the ones that will be taken in for medicine, for law, and all that. Those courses that are seen to be highly technical and requires a lot of intellectual capacity. So in those days, the people taken into the masquerade cult were people that have been ascertained to be of high intellectual capacity. And you see, these people were there carrying out researches, and then all that was going on, an African community was moving. So immediately the Westerners came in and took over, and then free education. Those people out there whose IQ did not meet the admission into the masquerade cults were the first ones available for them to use for the free education. Once you are into the free education, you will be taking free treatments in the hospitals. They brought hospitals, back then, to carry out researches to discover treatments to ailments. It was a tough thing. So medical fees was also equivalent to efforts imputed. And those native doctors were providing herbs to solve every kind of treatment. But when these Westerners came in, they said free education, free treatments. People now migrated down to free things. The patronage given to the native doctors who were producing traditional treatments was reducing. And gradually, it declined. And along the line, we also discovered in the research that the people that were taken as slaves, the major commodities in the slave trade, were the people in the masquerade cults. Those were the custodians of the knowledge system, and they were the major target in the slave trade. They were taken out, they were taken out, they were taken out, and that knowledge system was transported up outside Africa. And then gradually, what was left in the cult system was less of the initial aspect of that. The educative part of it was taken out gradually, and what was left was the social parameters that was just extracurricular. And then you see, I was asking, because all this happened several hundreds of years ago. I was never born then. I am privy to them through interviews and studies. And I asked a question, but we've been hearing that Africans never had a system of education. There was nothing like science education in Africa. How come you're saying all this? Can you give me an example of what the system of science education was? How can you make me to believe that? And the old man told me, see, like in the masquerade, I used to set an instance. They used to have some days, sacred days, that only the members of the masquerade will move outside. And then, if you're not a member of that masquerade, you can't move out. So maybe someone who is a member of the masquerade in another village comes in and then sees a masquerade member here. And what you see is, they call it insibidi. In the English, would mean test. Something will be written on the ground, and then the other person will have to solve it, give an answer to it. I'm told these were scientific theories. I'm told these were equivalent to a mathematician writing 2x plus 2y minus x is equal to, and you know, it's only a mathematician that can solve that. And there has to be an already a pre knowledge before such solutions could be given. So when those masquerade give such, is only someone who is an initiate can solve it, and solving it means they already have a pre-knowledge. And these are organized system of theories. They were not just things written at random. If they were things written at random, there would not be a concise solution to it. So this convinced me as a person, because I've heard about the NCBD. I've heard about those things, but sadly, nowadays, those things have died gradually because hundreds of years have passed, and the core custodians of those systems were taken up from slavery, and what was left was English education in science, in languages that we don't understand. And you see, you come out from school and you graduate with a whole lot of terminologies on your head that does not correspond to the environment. And the things you keep on importing are the things that are around us. You can call a name of a chemical, call a name of a state of affairs, and then you do not understand how to connect it to the environment, so that these things now lie as waste, and you keep on importing things that you have around you. So that has been the danger, that has been the problem that foreign education system has brought into Africa. The system that our forefathers were using, that our generation was supposed to have built up and keep it, was cut short. And we discovered in our research that all the nations that are technologically productive, advanced today, are nations that are continually building up what their ancestors started. The foundations that their ancestors laid, they are building it up gradually, and that to the extent that they're standing now. And Africans, our own was suspended, and something else brought in, and it brought about a collapse. So the more we continue trying to struggle to understand this new one, the more backward we become. And it is certain, and very, very certain, that it will continue like that until Africa will be down completely, buried. But since that is not the will of God, The will of God is that all should have life and have life abundantly, and Africans cannot be an exception. And so God knows that there was a foundation He had established for our forefathers, and that foundation was buried. So God had to bring up Afroscience Foundation to unearth that lyrics, that relics of African wisdom, and polish it and put it up, take it to where it ought to be. So the very essence, the very objective of Afroscience Foundation is to search, look for where the wisdom of Africans in science and technology ended, and take it from there, bring it up, and move it forward. And knowingly that this is the only way that Africa can rise again. This is the only way that African heritage can be sustained. This is the only way that Africa background can continue in posterity. And that is why Afroscience Foundation has come to stay. And that is why people from different African countries have come to be part of it. And that is why God Himself has given us a whole lot of courage, irrespective of rejection, irrespective of doubts that has been overtaken the people in authority that ought to support us. We have seen people struggle on their own to embark on these researches to see that we get out of and we achieve what is ahead of us. So, for now, that is Afroscience Foundation. And we will keep updating, showing you into Afroscience Foundation deeply and deeply. I am William Obot. I am the moderator of Afroscience Foundation. Nobody is a founder of Afroscience Foundation, because Afroscience Foundation is a continuation of the work of our ancestors. So Afroscience Foundation was founded by the ancestors of Africa. And the core difference between Afroscience and Western science. When I mean Western science, I mean sciences done by European, Americans, Asia, Middle East, all the scientific system that is not African. We classify it as Western science. And the difference between Western science and Afroscience is that Afroscience is communal in nature. Western science is individualistic in nature. Communal Afroscience means that Africans believe that knowledge comes from God. God who created the universe, the creator who created everything, has in his custody the design of creation, the principles that everything works with. And anyone who is close to the Creator spiritually has a privilege of being an instrument that the Creator will use to reveal this knowledge to humanity. And so Africans believe that it is not necessary for such a person to attribute his name to such a revelation, to such a knowledge, to such a discovery. So all of African system of knowledge was embedded in anonymity. Nobody had the right to put his name to any discovery. So all of African knowledge was embedded under African wisdom, and that is African epistemology. Any knowledge that has a name attached to it is not a part of African epistemology. And when you see the masquerade of Africans, which was the system, educational system of Africa, they use masks to cover their face. Each time they are coming out in their festival, they use masks to cover their face. The significance of that mask is the anonymity of knowledge, so that they won't take glory and say, okay, these are the people that are making the researches that are solving the problems of our community, and they will take the glory from God and give to them. So Africans believe that the glory should all be to God. That is why nobody took knowledge. And that is why, because you've not heard of any knowledge attributed to an African, you were forced to believe that Africans never discovered anything, Africans never knew anything. Africans knew a whole lot. A bulk of the slaves that were taken from the masquerade camp down to the west took with them the knowledge. And their slave masters took the knowledge from them and put their name to it. And a whole lot of knowledge that has names here and there came from Africa. So Afro Science Foundation is continuing with the tradition of our forefathers. Nobody has a name attached to any knowledge. And that is the difference between Afro Science and Western Science. And as we go on, as we continue, in our next episode, I'll tell you more and more about Afro Science. But for today, I want to thank you, and I want to, in a special way, appreciate people who have given us a whole lot of inspiration into this journey. The African Youth Envoy, in the person of Aya Chebi, she is a dynamic personality. She has given us so much inspiration. The paramount chief of Africa, King Francis Kelechi Nwaneri, is a grand patron of Afro Science Foundation. He is a Pan-Africanist to the core. Dr. Eileen Zuberi, who is the chairperson of the board of directors of Afro Science Foundation, she's a rare gem, fully committed to developing Africa. Dr. Maya Yehia, the regional coordinator of Northern Africa, Arabic-speaking territories, she is so wonderful. Good luck Nchebele, the Eastern region of regional coordinator, very wonderful person. And you see Dr. Salim Nyenam, the Western Africa French-speaking territories regional coordinator. They've really done so much for Afro Science. Dr. Nyebong Achibong, the head of the research department. They are wonderful people. In a very special way, I want to say that the people that have given us the needed push, Professor Etim Udoisien, Professor of Chemistry Emeritus in the University of Uyo, who is the Dean of Research, is a backbone. With people like that, you know that Afro Science will get to where God has destined it to. Professor Olalekan Bozra, who is the editor-in-chief of Afro Science Foundation, he is a wonderful personality. He is one who believes that in his lifetime, Africa must see the light again. We have 41 countries that make up Afro Science Foundation at the time being. And we are still trying to recruit more and more to see that Afro Science Foundation has the coverage all around Africa. And this is our vision. This is our dream. And you have to stand with us to see that this come alive. And it will be our pride that in our own generation, we took Africa to the next level. I thank you very much, and I thank the stakeholders of African Union for standing behind us. We shall not disappoint Africa. Thank you very much. Thank you, Africa.